Morning. The time is now 9:44 a.m. and a quorum of the board is present. The State Board of Education meeting of October 8th, 2024 is called to order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda in order of priority. Are there any items that board members would like to add or delete from the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would like to add to the agenda State Board of Education resolution in support of adequate recurring funding for children's mental health and school safety.
So we have a motion by Dr. Pugh. Do we have a second? We have a second from Ms. Lipton. Dr. Pugh, to you for an explanation of the resolution or a reading into the record.
Absolutely. I'll just really give a quick explanation. We are thankful for the legislature and the governor for restoring $126.5 million of funding to the budget in a supplemental budget. And we are just reiterating our thoughts on ensuring that these dollars continue to be put forward in a recurring fashion. We have to have many discussions. We don't have to talk about the statistics, but we know that we cannot let up the pressure and the forward movement and in a quick fashion and making sure that we're continuing to ask for those recurring dollars. We talk about the helps professions, and we also add to it restorative justice as well as conflict resolution, highlighting the need for those efforts and our educators and districts being able to have access to those dollars as well.
So we have a motion, we have a second, we've had an explanation of the resolution. Is there any other discussion? Mr. McMillan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be supporting this. However, when it comes up for a vote, I'll be offering an amendment because I do feel that if parents feel that the state or the government's counseling could be harmful to their child or not helpful, that they should be able to take the money and use it in a way that they deem would be most helpful or at least not harmful to their child. So I will be making an amendment, but to the matter, I'm fine with the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McMillan. Any other discussion? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote on inclusion of this resolution on the agenda. It is not a vote on the merits of the resolution. Ms. Evans, a roll call vote, please.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
And Tilly? Absent. Motion carries.
Any other additions to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to add resolution, State Board of Education resolution to support the funding of special education.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Senator Bullock. Dr. Pugh, back to you for explanation or reading.
I'll read this one, and it's pretty short. Whereas the Education for All Handicapped Act, Public Law 94-142, passed by Congress and signed into law by President Gerald Ford in November 1975, 49 years ago next month, calls for local school districts to provide services to students with disabilities and pledged that the federal government would fund 40% of the cost of these services. Whereas the Individuals with Disabilities Act, Public Law 101-476, passed by Congress and signed into law by President George H.W. Bush in October 1990, likewise pledged that the federal government would fund 40% of the cost of these services. Whereas the federal government has never funded half of its initial commitment in this important area, let alone the aforementioned 40%. Whereas the failure to make good on this pledge, all else being equal, affects students across the country, both with and without disabilities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the State Board of Education calls on Congress to fund 40% of the cost of services for students with disabilities.
We have a motion. We have a second. We've had the motion read into the record. Any other discussion? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote on inclusion of this item on the agenda.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Dr. Pritchett moves. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Lipton. Is there any discussion? Mr. McMillan?
Yeah, I certainly cannot support approving this agenda despite numerous board members, not just a bipartisan desire apparently to discuss and perhaps resolve the matter of the harm done by this department and our superintendent to over 100,000 special education students during and after COVID. In this matter, the complaint is going before a judge soon, that it's not on the agenda. I can't believe that it's been 2 years. There's been no discussion publicly. This board, if it was actually going to take up what it should be doing and not just being a servant to this superintendent, but actually leading, would demand that this be a discussion on the agenda and that we discuss it thoroughly. The complaint about compensatory services that are due to these special education students that were denied in great part with the support of this department and this superintendent. It would be debated, discussed, and then we would direct the superintendent how to resolve this. And I'm confident that, well, I'm not confident this board would do the right thing, but I am confident that the public would understand what the right thing would be, and that, like all other states that have been in similar situations, it would be resolved without having to be adjudicated. So I'm baffled that it's not on the agenda, and so I certainly wouldn't support this agenda.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Ms. Evans, a roll call vote, please.
I'm sorry, I would like to say something as
Please.
well. Further, I would say that it's gotten worse since the OCR complaints that the Michigan Department of Education is not willing to acknowledge. There are further complaints of certain special education directors in the state of Michigan that are not certified, have gone before the ISD, who's now dismissing them even though they're getting meetings within the department to discuss it. And so what you're seeing is this continuous digging in of the heels and not doing the next right thing. So while Tom and I will likely agree to the idea that, yes, special education needs to be funded, nobody's disagreeing with that. Once it's funded, we have to actually have special education directors, special education teachers that are certified and supported and honored so that they can carry out the services that students need. But unfortunately, this board, this department refuses to recognize the steps that need to be taken towards that. So no, I won't support the agenda for that reason as well.
Thank you very much, Ms. Snyder. Ms. Evans, a roll call vote, please.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton? Yes. McMillan?
No.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
And Snyder.
No.
Motion carries.
Board, it is 9:53, and you have an agenda. At this time, Ms. Liz Evans, State Board Executive, will introduce members of the State Board of Education.
Good morning. You have just been listening to Dr. Michael Rice, Chairperson of the State Board and State Superintendent. To his left around the table is Board President Dr. Pamela Pugh from Saginaw, Board Co-Vice President Ms. Ellen Cogan-Lipton from Huntington Woods, NASB Delegate Dr. Mitchell Robinson from Okemos, Ms. Nikki Snyder, and Ms. Kelly Kuzmano, the 24-25 Michigan Teacher of the Year. And now seated to my right is Mr. Tom McMillan from Oakland Township, Board Treasurer Mr. Marshall Bullock from Detroit, Board Co-Vice and Ms. Tiffany Tilley is not here, but that's her seat from West Bloomfield, and Board Secretary Dr. Judith Pritchett from Washington Township. Joining us virtually today is Ms. Emma Young, the staff member representing the Governor's Office.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. The public may register to provide comment during the public participation portion of the meeting at approximately 1 p.m. Those wishing to make public comment must register before 1 p.m. To provide public comment by telephone, please complete the registration form on the MDE webpage at www.michigan.gov/MDE. To provide public comment in person, please complete a green public comment form when you arrive here at the meeting location. These instructions are listed on the MDE webpage at www.michigan.gov/MDE. For the first item on today's agenda for the Committee of the Whole meeting is a presentation on CTE education. promoting growth and diversity through partnerships. During today's presentation, Genesee Intermediate School District will discuss how CTE education can help districts improve diversity, equity, and inclusion in Michigan schools, and learn about the Genesee Career Institute's Fire Academy and student outcomes. We welcome our presenters, Dr. Michelle Harmala, Deputy Superintendent in the Division of Educator Excellence, Career and Technical Education, Special Education, and Administrative Law; Selena Mills, Director of MDE's Office of Career and Technical Education; Diana Allard, Executive Director of CTE and Genesee ISD; Kevin Harms, Genesee ISD CTE Instructor and Fire Academy. And we had hoped that Brooke, our ISD CTE student from the Fire Academy, would be here, but she is otherwise preoccupied at the moment. Also attending today's meeting is the Venerable Dr. Stephen Tunnicliffe, Superintendent for the Genesee Intermediate School District. This is an informational presentation. No board action is required. Presenters, welcome.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here to share with you just one story of how we're working in Genesee County to promote growth and diversity, not just in our programs, but within our workforce. And I do need to say, speaking to the need for firefighters, Brooke is actually working today. So as much as she wanted to be here, duty calls. So first of all, you know, we've been through a lot of years of CTE, and one of the things, four of the things actually that have always been first and foremost in our minds is making sure that we have learner outcomes that are always enhanced and work towards that workforce and industry certification. We work hard to increase student engagement and retention, and you'll see that through this hands-on application. Better preparation for a diverse workforce, and then broader access to opportunities. This Fire Academy is the only one in Genesee County, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Before I start this video, a little history behind the Fire Academy. So 4 years ago, actually, our Genesee County Fire Chiefs Association came to me and talked about the dire need for firefighters in our community and how could we help them reach a younger group of individuals who may have a desire to work in this field. So we did a little research on our end, found that we had 700 students in Genesee County who were interested in a career in fire, which, you know, is exciting. You can't let that pass when students have a caring heart to help others. We had to dig deep and figure out how we could accommodate that. So we looked at a lot of different fire facilities across the state, and all of those were either in a classroom or at an actual fire station. And one of the barriers we have in our county, because it's so broad, is transportation. So we knew that we would have to build something on site so that students would have access to this fire training facility. So what we built, and you'll see more of, is the first standalone actual fire training academy on a CTE campus. We worked with the chiefs to make sure that it has everything it needs, not just to train our students, but to train our community. So for example, the roof is set up so that they can access and come through hatches. You see that huge training tower there to work on bringing ropes up, and then the open window, we have a removable window that we put in so students can learn how to get through those pieces. And then I'll let our chief, who isn't here today, talk about how this actually came to be.
So we learn from our mistakes, right? All right, ready, go.
When they finish the class, they have the opportunity to take the state certification test to become a licensed or certified firefighter in the state of Michigan. The kids that have been completely successful leave high school and right away get on a fire department.
That's actually been the most rewarding experience of all of this, is watching them grow into what they're becoming and seeing that they can break the barriers that they thought they had.
A lot of it is team building, working as a team, working together. Communication is key. You got to communicate, and they learn those skills.
I wasn't really expecting everyone to be like so uplifting. I've never really had that in like any other class, like for regular school, but here it's like different. We're more like family.
So in 2 years, we got 10 new firefighters out of this program. Like I said, better than zero. It will get better, and we'll see more as time goes on. So I think our success rate as far as the number of students who actually go on to become firefighters is going to increase.
Yep, this is my what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be a firefighter.
The next video, although Brooke isn't here, we are capturing a lot of her thoughts. So one of the things that has been eye-opening for us was the low number of females who are going into this field. It's actually only 10% of the staff are made up of women, and we have like 38% this year that are females. So you'll get to hear Brooke talk about how that's making a difference for her.
We were doing a physical agility course and we're going up, and I just needed to pause for a second. It was the first time we were on air, and he was like, "You're a warrior, Brooke. You're a warrior. You got this." They just build you up, and I just went and grabbed the tanks and I walked up the stairs, walked back down. They know how to build you up.
I think that's important, speaks to the whole piece of inclusion, wanting to make sure that our students feel belonging. And then because we contract with the Genesee County Fire Chiefs Association, we have 4 or 5 individuals who are there when they're doing those skills. So there's a lot of, it may be a Flint Fire Department, a Mount Morris Fire Department, Grand Blanc, but they're all there giving a different perspective. And this is Tayshawn, just another example of a student. And as you see here, he says, "I wanted a career where I help others, not just myself." So he was a student last year. He talks about situation awareness, including fire alarms, sprinklers, and how to connect to the community. This year, he came back to our construction program, recognizing that construction is an important part of fighting fires. He's also a student at Mott Middle College, which means he's getting his associate's degree. One of the best quotes, right, is his instructor told him, "If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life," which is so true. And then speaking to diversity, one of the challenges we have, you'll see that there's a high percentage just in fire departments that is just white. And we have the same that we're seeing in our Genesee County Fire Academy. So although we're doing good work in gender diversity, we're increasing the amount of females, we're still looking to increase the number of students who might reflect their community. Although our county, you'll see in the next slide, so I shouldn't, but our county is matching the fire department demographics. A lot of our districts are a total flip of that. So we want to make sure that we're exposing everyone to a career here. And the bottom slide shows you how we've increased in our enrollment. We started out with a part-time contract for a fire instructor, and we've hired Mr. Harms as our full-time instructor. And then we've just grown in the number of certifications and then continued to grow in employment. So really giving back to our community. So Genesee County as a whole, our K-12 student size, you can see is 58,000. Across our county, we have 109 state-approved CTE programs, so that's broadening that access to opportunities. 16.9% live below poverty. Again, the county as a whole, 71% white, 5.3% unemployment rate, and then we do benefit from a vocational millage, which is also why it was important for us to bring those firefighters in as we were designing and building to make sure that building could be used outside of the day for their training. These obviously, I've talked about this a little bit, but when we consider equity, no matter what program we're looking at, that access and opportunities, again, this is the only fire academy in the county. It's a huge demand. We have an aviation program, only one in the county, making sure that students have that opportunity. And then our education, equal access to resources. So students don't pay for anything to be part of our career center. They don't pay for any boots. The fire department, and in most of our programs that are tied to a business, those are donated. So firefighters from around the county turn over their hoods and jackets. We buy helmets and things that they can keep, but it's really about that community partnership. Barriers, I've already mentioned transportation. That's important to us to make sure kids have a ride to our programs. And sometimes that means students are waiting for a bus at 6 o'clock in the morning to get it to our 7 o'clock session. So there's a real need or a real want for students to be part of what we're doing. Support systems, we know that these are high school students from a lot of different environments. So we have special population support, we have math, we have ELA, we have a counselor, we have a social worker, a lot of people that just spend their day wrapping around kids and making them feel like the girl in the video who mentioned family and belonging. And then I want to give you a student perspective from this group again about how teamwork makes everyone feel included. It's very important to us that our curriculum is culturally relevant. And then, of course, we provide a lot of professional development to our instructors on things like social emotional learning and mental health resources, et cetera.
There you go. Keep the momentum.
Keep going.
I love the teamwork. I also love how we get angry with each other because it shows that we care. I love how I go there and it's okay to make mistakes right now. We learn from those mistakes.
Never leave that nozzle unattended like that. If you do that, you're not going to pass the state practical. All right? Any questions on anything?
We look at them and we're like, hey, we know you're so hot, you know, you feel like you could just rip off all your gear and freak out and cry or whatever you want to do. Don't do it. Because now next time you do that, you're going to be able to push past that, push past your physical limitations.
Another piece to that video that's so powerful is you hear the instructor immediately be able to correct a behavior about the hose, and the student learns from it right away. And that's when we have hands-on curriculum like that, it makes it really easy for that correction and learning. I'm going to skip the next slide just for time, and I know you want to hear from my instructor.
Putting them.
Actually, the next two. So you have in front of you a program of study, and this is really important to us because we have 20 programs of study as part of CTE. And what we're trying to do is help students understand that there is a pathway beyond this first level of certification that they get in high school. So this program of study talks about the progression from firefighter to EMT to paramedic, so that students understand the wage that they come in at as a firefighter can grow, and here's the pathway to do that. So you'll see that we lay out with our partnerships with our community colleges what classes they need to take, and in some instances, when they're part of our early middle college, they're enrolled in those while they're in high school. And this is at no cost to the student. So just really giving them an opportunity to feel success while they're still in high school and have all of those wraparound supports. And then finally for me, the challenge to us all as we look at career and technical education is really what I spoke to. How do we make sure that all of our districts are getting the opportunity to participate? If we have low enrollment from one district, we're really ramping up our recruiting efforts in order to increase the enrollment there because we know CTE is so powerful for students in terms of their high school success. And then diversity, how are we recruiting and retaining that diverse population? Inclusion, I spoke to that. How can we make sure kids feel welcome? And then equity, are we offering equal access to all of those resources and removing barriers? So this is something that we look at continually as part of career and technical education. And then I asked our instructor and of course Brooke to talk about some reflections on this topic for you. And I know that Brooke shared her reflections, so I think Mr. Harms is going to cover that too.
Yeah, how has the program worked to prepare? And I think that what she said, I laugh at still to this day, is she said that we got angry, and she got angry with herself more than she did with others. But it was that teamwork, and what she had said was that she worked with people that she wouldn't normally work with. And within the first few weeks, you notice who tends to flock together in the class with seating, and you start to mix it up, and I required people to start working with people they wouldn't necessarily normally do that with. So they started working on each other's strengths, and that was what she had said that made her more diverse. People that she wouldn't necessarily associate with working together. As far as how this has worked impacting within the fire department, I still am actively involved. And I have the opportunity now to work with younger, and I'm going to kind of, younger generation, I'm going to include the next question. And the barrier, I don't believe anyone in this room would be surprised if I said that a challenge or a barrier we still have is staffing, enough younger people, especially now. I took a class 2 years ago where we learned that this is the first time that possibly 5 different generations are actively still in the fire service. And linking that together, that's a barrier between communication. And this has been a very positive aspect in the fire service for us.
So thank you again for the opportunity to share one of our stories briefly. And that's it for us.
Thank you very much, Ms. Allard. Presenters, we appreciate you. Ms. Snyder.
Love your presentation. This is, I would say, a great example of what real, true inclusion and diversity looks like. And, you know, just keep spreading your story. Definitely relate to the young girl that talks about anger being wielded for good. Very well known as a tough, pissed off mom, but tough doesn't mean mean, and pissed off doesn't mean bad. So when you can wield it to fight fires, it's a really big thing. Grew up in the UP, I was told a lot that girls don't play hockey. Those types of messages are not helpful to us. And so when you tell her she's a warrior and she can wield that warriorship for good for people, it really makes a difference.
Olivia in that video is also a hockey player.
Like, that's awesome.
I think it's been really good for us as well with us as instructors that are still actively involved. Again, when I am going to be dependent on you for my life, I want to make sure that you know what you're doing and do it well.
I love it.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Ms. Lipton?
Thank you. This was a great presentation, and just a couple of just further questions that I have. So just looking at this sequence of courses, it looks like the entrance point is at 12th grade for the students, or are they able
It's at
to?
11th, it's either at 11th or 12th grade. Traditionally, it's 11th grade.
Okay.
Depending on the student's readiness, they may not start college courses until 12th grade. It really just depends on also the district's ability, where they're at in terms of graduation requirements, et cetera.
Okay. That makes more sense, because sometimes when you don't introduce something until 12th grade, you've sort of lost that window of time. So the concept is offered a little bit earlier. You talked about the transportation challenge, and that was sort of the kickstart for having the academy that was built. If that hadn't happened, can you envision being able to do the work that you do? Like, let's say, for example, you had been able to sort of solve the transportation issue. The reason why I'm probing this is because I'm involved with the Promise Zones, and the Hazel Park Promise Zone in Oakland County has just began a fire academy in conjunction with the local community college. But the challenge is getting the real world experience for the students, because they don't have a standalone academy. Oakland County does not have that. And so I'm just sort of wondering, if that had not happened, can you envision a program, if you had been able to solve the transportation issue, being able to build a robust fire academy? Or do you feel that, and I'm not, whatever you tell me is what I'll sort of take back, to the people that I'm working with. But do you feel that having that sort of facility is a linchpin, or can you potentially do something like a fire academy if you're able to transport the students to various sites? And I don't know the answer to that, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
So I think it's the willingness of your community. So and there are other places where the fire academy exists within the building, and it's just a classroom.
Okay.
But firefighters, and we've had, some days there are 6 of them who show up to work with our kids. So if they're willing to come in and come to the site to remove that barrier for students, that can make a tremendous difference, because sometimes it really is just, you hear that instructor talking to them. Sometimes it's just hearing about what the job looks like. And then I do think before the fire academy was built, we were 2 years without it. And we were taking them on Saturdays with a bus out to different fire facilities so that they could practice.
Okay.
So I think there are multiple ways to do it. It just really depends on that relationship with your community. And I know in our case, they were so interested in building this pipeline that they would do whatever they needed. You don't want to be short a firefighter on a call. And so I think it really just depends on that relationship. I would encourage you to talk to them about how can we work in some Saturdays or some other times where we can bring kids over to a facility and then where they can come in and kind of co-teach and give some life lessons and things in the actual facility.
And then, just to follow up to that, in terms of getting students to the facility, do you have a partnership with particular schools, or is this something that's available to all students that go to school in Genesee County within the ISD? And if so, how do you get the students in some of those, faraway school districts to the site?
So we have a transportation consortium, so all of our districts participate in it.
Okay.
And we purchase the buses, the ISD runs all of that. But that's why I mentioned some students may have to be waiting at 6 o'clock in the morning because it's a 40-minute commute
Right.
from like a school on the north side of the county over to the center. So the way it works essentially is the high school buses pick up the students as they normally would, take them to the high school, and then our buses come in and get them from the high school, and then naturally return them. We run 3 sessions. So when students are dismissing, there's another set of students being dropped off, and so the buses are just going back and forth. But there are, consortium fleet of buses, so they're on the roads for Genesee Career Institute. So it doesn't take from the district's bus population at all.
Right. And then just lastly, I'm sure you already know this, but Flint was one of our expansion promise zones. So the fact that you have this plus, particularly in Flint, a promise zone, it does allow for students who complete this to also have additional scholarship dollars for any post-secondary classes in addition to the certification paid for by the Promise Zone in Flint. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Lipton. Other board members? Senator Bullock.
It's a great program. I know we in Detroit had started a pilot program several years ago with the fire department, put an academy in a west side school and an east side school, and then they actually did the fire. That was for the EMT. It started with the EMT program, and then they went into fire training at the academy, which was next door to the west side school. So the fire training is right on the same grounds, basically. But those kids are coming right out of high school and being hired immediately because they had the EMT training through the 11th or 12th grade. So they went to class 3 days a week, trained 2 days a week for the whole semester, and so we love it.
We have a 5-to-1 ratio that the Bureau of Fire Services requires of us on practical days. So when we have that, we have lots of representation from the city of Grand Blanc and the city of Flint. Are both pretty well represented. And 2 of our students, to follow up with that as an answer, just graduated in June and were hired full-time in the city of Flint in August to look at the next 30-year career with retirement with benefits at 18 years old is fantastic.
And isn't there money in the budget for free tuition for the EMT training?
Yes.
So yeah, we had made sure that was thrown in there.
Yeah.
So,
Anything more?
No, I'm
You
good.
good? Thank you, Senator. Dr. Pritchett?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. So if I'm a student in Genesee County and I'm interested in the fire academy, and maybe I'm misunderstanding this, I really have 2 kind of pathways. I can finish up as a senior in high school and then go get my certification after that. I also could be part of the early college track and finish up at the end of year 13 and do the same thing, but would spend that extra time at Genesee, possibly taking other courses that would complement the fire or EMT in that area. Is that correct?
Well, so students don't have to be part of the early middle college to be part of our fire academy. So it's a 1-year program, so students could come, so like Tayshawn that you saw in the picture, he came to our program as an 11th grader. He happened to be part of Mott Middle College, but he didn't have to be.
Okay.
So then his 12th grade year, so they can just take it for a year and get their certification and go right to work. Or, like you're talking about, the early middle college gives them the opportunity to do fire for a year, EMT for 2 years, then graduate with those credits to be a paramedic. And what we found is the EMT and fire certification gives them much more marketability. And then, again, all of that certifications and training is on our cost, so we use our CTE dollars to cover for all their certifications. So the only other route would be a student goes through high school, graduates, and then becomes a part of a fire department and gets their training outside. And then, of course, then it's on the fire department's dollars, where we're taking that on when we have them in high school.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchett. I was remiss in not mentioning Mr. Jason Carlisle, principal of the Genesee Career Institute. Welcome. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate your leadership as well. Any other board members before Ms. Snyder gets her second bite of the apple? Ms. Snyder.
Just a quick question. Do you guys have anybody who has gone from, ground floor to like flight paramedics or anything?
Not
Okay.
yet. So we are in our third year. We started our fourth year of this program.
Yeah.
In other programs, we have a number of students who follow our early middle college, and
Okay.
21 years old are nurses down in Beaumont because it only took them a year and a half after they finished everything through our program. So we're just new to this.
Yeah, it just seems like a cool thing to let them know, that
And because of
a
this,
pathway here.
because of this, we also had a need or a request from our Genesee County Dispatch. So we opened a 911 program this year. So same sort of piece. Students go through, get their 911 multiple. There's about 6 certifications, and they can go right to dispatch. And we're working alongside of it's, again, the first in the state. We're working alongside Genesee County's dispatch system, so they're trained on the same software,
Okay.
the same system, the same phones, and they're spending weeks at a time next to a dispatcher to really learn the job. Because of course my concern was an 18-year-old taking a trauma call from Flint, how are they prepared for that? So there's a lot of certifications around social emotional learning.
Understood.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Snyder. Any other board members? Senator Bullock.
And maybe I missed the marketing. How are you guys marketing to the schools? And are you considering marketing like a cadet for younger individuals, middle school or freshmen, as like a cadet program, so that they're around it and then they're more interested when they get to the level they can enter that program?
So I'll take the general recruiting and then I'll let you answer the cadet piece. So we go out in 10th grade, we do what we are called road shows. We go to every one of our districts and have their 10th graders in the auditorium or someplace, and they hear about every program that we have. Then what happens is they sign up to pick 2 to come visit. On the day they come visit, we don't have all of our students in class, we just have our seniors who are considered ambassadors. So they get to visit those 2 programs and have those students teach them about what they're learning. And then what happens is we have an open house where parents can come, and then essentially our districts individually choose who's going to actually take the seats, if you will. Because we don't have enough room for everybody, unfortunately, districts typically get about 50 to 60 seats across the board. So those counselors and districts who know more about the student and their career interests make a decision regarding who is the best fit for these programs. And then I'll let you talk about the cadet program.
The Ambassador Day on that note, we had a very great moment last year was seeing the students that had not necessarily come alive yet, but come alive by February when we do that, that we'd already done forcible entry training. We work with construction trades at GCI to get us plenty of scrap wood. And we already had the prop. We shoved the scrap wood in and they're able to break the door down. That became a favorite activity for the whole class. With that said, though, being October, Fire Prevention Month, I have still a lot of influence within the county, and I've challenged the fire departments in Genesee County to get out to the higher schools and do some presentation as well. So some of that shouldn't just fall back on us, and we're doing as much as we can highlighting that, but I've also encouraged the fire departments to do the same. So it's a win-win for both of us, I believe.
Yeah, I just remember as a Cub Scout sliding down the pole.
They wouldn't let me build a pole. I wanted a pole, and they said liability, I couldn't have a pole in that fire academy.
working on a slide, though.
It's interesting how adults bond over kids' spirit. Anything else from the board? Presenters, we appreciate your presentation. We appreciate the focus, in addition to other areas, on diversity, gender diversity, ethnic diversity. It's important. As we build out CTE across the state, we want to give more children opportunities to participate by gender, by ethnicity, by socioeconomic status, by geography. Really important. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You have a great day. Thank you. Ordinance 1025, the next item on today's agenda is a CTE overview, learning that works for Michigan students. During this presentation, you will be provided an overview of career and technical education, including the 4 components of a state-approved program and how CTE is delivered throughout the state. We welcome our presenters back by popular demand. Dr. Michelle Harmala, Deputy Superintendent, Division of Educator Excellence, Career and Technical Education, Special Education, and Administrative Law, and Selena Mills, Director of the Office of Career and Technical Education. This is an informational presentation. No board action is required. Presenters, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Rice, and thank you, board. We are very excited to share with you this morning an overview of our career and technical education programs in Michigan. And Selena Mills, our new director, is going to take it from here.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here, and Diana set the stage really well. So my job is to teach you a little bit more about the specifics of CTE and to show you that while her program is amazing, it's not an anomaly. It's really the norm. So in CTE, we touch these 5 goals deeply of the top 10. And when you heard Diana talk, you'll realize while we're part of the general education system, we really sit apart from the traditional class that you might have taken, a traditional math class, even a traditional elective like a woodworking class. CTE looks very different. So to give you a little background, I'd like to give you some terminology so that you understand how we're structured. We have what we call 53 CPIDs, or Career Education Planning Districts, in CTE. They typically, you'll see on the map, revolve around a county or a group of counties. And each of those career education planning districts has an administrator or a CPID who oversees the state-approved programs in that area. And then while the numbers are the same, they don't necessarily go together in the same way, but we also operate 53 what we call SIP codes, or Classification of Instructional Programs. So these are national codes that help us categorize the programs that we offer. An example of this might be, there's a SIP code that's 51.0000. Those are health science programs. Or 12.0500 are culinary programs. And that helps us determine what the standards are that our program will follow, and then what kind of experiences students will have. Now, these programs are typically built around our career zones and clusters. So here in Michigan, we have 6 career zones. You might know these as formerly the Michigan Career Pathways. They were called that prior to 2018. Then when we introduced the career development model, we changed that terminology simply because you'll see in a few slides, there are other things that are also called pathways. And then we have 17 career clusters here in Michigan. So some of our programs are set at the cluster level, where they're designed to show students a really broad overview of all the possible careers. And others then are more at what we call the pathway level. So they're a little bit more prescribed and detailed, and they center around particular occupations. So for example, we talked about health science, that sits at the cluster level. We also have automotive programs, and those are at the pathway level. So there are 79 career pathways that align with those 17 career clusters. Another example of this might be when we look at health science, there are 4 pathways that align with health science. So in that cluster, you might go into clinical medical lab research. You might also go into therapeutic services, which is where our nursing professions would be. So we have those 53 unique SIP codes. Within those 53 SIP codes, we have over 2,000 programs in the state. So when you think of a program, think of this as a series of courses or classes that you might take. So when you were in high school, if you took Algebra 1 and it took you 2 semesters to do that, that was like a program. Diana talked about her fire program. Every one of those is counted across the state, and that makes up over 2,000. And then we have over 112,000 students in CTE right now. There are multiple delivery systems that we use to offer CTE. So it might be delivered in a center, and you heard Diana's example of that center. It might also be delivered in a consortia, where there may not be a center or a county-wide model, but local districts get together and agree to share services and allow students to participate across districts. And then finally, we have those local comprehensive high schools that have a program within their high school that's only offered to those high school students. And when you enter a CTE program, there are 4 required components that make this look different than your average class or elective. And you'll see those 4 here. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one. So when students enter a CTE program, a vital component is classroom instruction. They need to understand the knowledge and the information to build their skills. So they get that technical knowledge, but they also understand the academic skills. So there's alignment to those academic standards, and they start to understand, how does math and how does ELA fit into my future career and into this program. And then we also teach what we call career-ready practices. So you might know these as employability skills or soft skills, and we're really working with students to make sure they understand what those are and what they need to use those, what they need to do to be able to use those out in the field. Because we align to those academic standards, students have the opportunity when they enter the program to be able to earn Michigan Merit Flexibility credits. So they can do this in a couple of different ways. It may be embedded within their course or integrated, or because they've participated in a CTE program, they might be able to waive particular credits to allow them more room to participate. And then the other vital part of this that you saw, especially in that early middle college program of study, is a post-secondary linkage. So every program must have some sort of post-secondary linkage. It needs to include either dual enrollment credits, articulated credits, or some other concurrent enrollment with our post-secondary institutions. And you'll see we have 15 institutions around the state at the post-secondary level that have statewide agreements, but there are also agreements at the local level as well. And then you had a much better example of this from Diana than you see here, but this is a program of study. And so with those post-secondary agreements, we also are required to show our students how they can use both the Michigan Merit Flexibility and the post-secondary linkage within their program. So it's a 6-year program of study that outlines what they would take and where they can end up. So our second component is laboratory learning. And again, you saw this in that Fire Academy program, but students are required to have hands-on training and technical skill development so that they're learning some of those skills in advance before they get out into the workforce. Instructors can use project-based learning to do this. They can use simulation labs. They often use some real-life interaction with business and industry partners to be able to do that. And those instructors that are teaching the courses are all certified instructors, but they do require that they have 4,000 extra hours of industry experience so that they're experts in their field. So you saw our Fire Academy instructor works at the Fire Academy and is able to bring that to the table. The benefit of that is that they can talk about what happens in the workforce and on the job. And then another key component of this is that students are able to earn those certifications in advance. So right now we have over 400 what we call state-approved credentials on our list that students can earn across programs. They can be any number or any combination of those 5 things that you see on the left. So it could be a license from industry, it could be an educational degree, or it could be an industry-recognized credential. The third component is work-based learning. So once you learn all of these things in the classroom, we want students to be able to see what this looks like on the job. and to have an experience out in industry to see what their future occupation would look like and to practice those skills with someone other than their instructor. So each of our programs looks at that work-based learning component, and there are 5 different ways that they can do that. Starts with awareness, thinking about what careers are out there and having an opportunity to do further exploration. And then they actually go out and perform some of those skills, and it can lead eventually to a placement at a job site where they're working more with an industry professional than they are with their instructor. And finally, in some programs, that culminates in a youth apprenticeship. And again, we talked about those career-ready practices. Students are able to take what they learned in the classroom and then try it out with an employer. So they start to build their ability to be a good employee in a very safe environment. And then finally, the 4th component is student leadership. We want all of our students to understand how to be a leader in their field and how to be a good teammate as well. So there are ongoing leadership opportunities that we offer either through experiences in the classroom or on the work site or with our career and technical student organizations. And in this model, you'll see how we approach that leadership. We start first with the individual student and building their own capacity. And then we focus on being a good team member and some of the skills that it takes to be part of a team. And then finally, we focus on those leadership skills individually. So being part of a CTE program benefits students. It helps them engage in their learning. They start to understand why those academic content standards are important and how they're actually used in their future career. And it helps engage them in learning. You kind of heard Brooke and I believe it was Olivia's story on the video about how engaged they were in their program and what they were learning. So this also impacts our graduation rate in a really positive way. It helps students have a motivation for finishing because they know what's there waiting for them after high school. So we look at some data around this. We go back and ask students after they have left high school about the program that they were in. And we look at CTE concentrators. So those are students who have taken approximately half or more of a program. And so they've likely made it most of the way through. And we look at whether or not they're employed, if they're continuing in their post-secondary education, or a combination of those things. And then we ask them what they're doing with the things that they learned. Are they using those skills? And you'll see our data here. Now, once in a while, we find that students aren't using those skills because maybe they've discovered it's not a career for them. And in our world, that's still a success because students at least know what they don't want to do. So we see those numbers as very positive things. But we know that overall, students who participate in CTE have better outcomes, not just right after high school, but further down the road. So if you look at this graph, you'll see students who did not participate in any CTE, students who were enrolled, so maybe they've taken a course, but they haven't made it halfway through. Students who were then concentrators and students who were completers. And if you look across those colors on the bar graph here, you'll see as we get into those higher degrees especially, students who were concentrators or completers in CTE programs had higher wages than those who never participated at all. So I'd like to show you some of the data that we've been following because we believe all students should be participating in CTE. If we have these wonderful, amazing outcomes and we're providing that competitive advantage for students, we think everyone should be part of it. And right now, at 112,000 plus students last year in CTE, that's only about 25% of our 9 through 12 population. So we have 75% who still haven't taken advantage of being part of a CTE program. And we've got a box around those numbers there so that you can see at that 112,156 students, we've just barely crept above those pre-pandemic numbers. So we've just made it back to where we were or just past the 1920 school year. Now you'll also see our number of male and female students. So we have gained some for females. We're not quite there yet with males. And again, we're looking at that gender diversity. Are we offering this opportunity to all students, and are they taking advantage of that? And then beyond just our male and female students and our overall numbers, we also look at the breakdown of students. Does our population look like the population outside the CTE classroom in the halls of the school? And does it look like the population of the community that we serve? Because it should. So you can see here our 23-24 numbers. And again, we're getting back and have made some gains in most areas just based on enrollment. So these are students, again, who are taking advantage of the access to the program. They're looking at enrolling in a program, but they may not have made it all the way through. And then we look at our special populations. So are we meeting the needs of those special population students? So looking at our students with disabilities, those that are economically disadvantaged, and our English learners. And again, if you look at where we're at in 23-24, our most recent data, and compare that to the 19-20 school year, we are there in some respects and not quite in others. So we're working to get back to those same pre-pandemic numbers. Now, these are students who have enrolled. So if you remember the graph that we just looked at, there is some advantage to those students. And we really want to improve the number of students who are able to take advantage of access to a CTE program. But then we also look at the number of students who complete the program. So once they're in a CTE program, are we making an impact for them as well? So here you'll see the same tables, but we're looking at students who have completed. They've made it all the way through the course. Our hope is that they have a credential, they have some post-secondary credits, and they're ready for their next step. So here when you look at completers, our numbers are above where they were in 19-20. And again, our total students are a little bit higher. And then you can see we've made an impact on completers at both genders. And if we look at students by race and ethnicity, we again have made some improvements in those areas, but we can still continue to make more. And then finally looking at CTE completers by special populations. Here, we're not too far off from where we were in 19-20. So in this area, we have some more work to do, looking at how are we supporting our students in those areas, and how can we ensure that once they're in the program, they're getting what they need to succeed and they're completing successfully. So we're looking at some of this data coming up in a workshop with our staff, because while we look at this as statewide numbers, the real power is looking by district. To really break this down and looking at district by district, what does this look like individually? So we're working with staff on what we call opportunity gaps. Where are there places where we have not met the need, and where does more work need to be done? And I want to show you an example of this on this map. We look at opportunity gaps. We also look at something called CTE deserts, and this is our desert map. So I told you 25% of our 9-12 population is participating or enrolling in CTE. If you look at this map, those areas that are light, that's where students are not enrolling to the degree that we would anticipate. In darker areas, we have greater than anticipated numbers. And so again, when we looked at those charts, we looked across and it didn't look like we were doing too bad as a state in comparison to where we were pre-pandemic. But when you look at these areas, you can see we have students who don't have access in some areas, and they aren't benefiting from that competitive advantage that CTE provides. Now, the reason for this, after looking at what a CTE program looks like, is that it's complex. It requires a lot of personnel, it requires specialized personnel, and it requires a lot of funding. It costs a lot more to run a CTE program than it does to run an algebra class. So there are some things that we can be doing to work on this, and some of that came up in the questions that you asked earlier. So one of the things that we're doing here at the department is continuing to look at those CTE deserts and opportunity gaps, to really dig into that data on a district level to understand not only what does the statewide data say, but what does it say individually, and what do we need to do in our own backyards? So we're looking at where those inequities lie. For example, you heard Diana talk about transportation, that could have been a barrier if they didn't have the funding to address that. And in several areas, transportation creates inequities in CTE, where it takes too long for a student to get somewhere, or they don't have the transportation to be able to participate. And then you asked great questions about middle school. Sometimes when we start in the 11th and 12th grade, it might be too late in a student's schedule for them to start in a CTE program, or it's really late for them to even start exploring. So we need to start earlier and look at career exploration and career development at much younger levels to help students determine where they want to go and how to plan their high school career so that they can participate in CTE. And then we have funding inequities. If you are a center or if you have a millage, you may have more access to funds than if you're a consortia and you don't have the ability to fund as many programs as you'd like. So that might lead to some of those deserts and opportunity gaps. And then some of the things that we ask folks to do in CTE, for example, offer those credentials of value to students. Those also cost money and are difficult to do without extra funds. So other ways that we can start to address this are by looking at those inequities, but also looking at innovative delivery. If we start to look at ways that we can offer CTE, maybe a little bit differently than what we have before, thinking about virtual delivery models or distance learning in some programs or in parts of programs where it makes sense, we might be able to help students have more of an opportunity to participate. And then also looking at other partnerships and avenues. So for example, we've started working with advanced placement courses to be able to offer students opportunities to participate in both advanced placement and CTE at the same time. And then finally, we really need to look at CTE for all students and that stigma that still exists for CTE. So you heard me talk about that competitive advantage and what our programs must have. And yet sometimes we still have folks who think, if I'm not going to college, well then maybe I'm entering the workforce and I'm going to go to CTE. And really those things are one and the same. So a majority of our programs require post-secondary training, although that may look different across the profession. They require post-secondary training after high school. It's very rare to be able to just leave high school and have a well-paying job that can support a family. So we need to get at that stigma of CTE and let folks know how amazing the opportunity is and what things they can come out with if they participate in a CTE program. So it's our goal that then, the next time you see something like this, our participation will be higher than 25%. So thank you so much for letting me give you a little background information and letting me present what we're doing in CTE.
Thank you very much, presenters, board members. Questions, Senator Bullock.
Great presentation. I got millions of questions, but I'm not going to do that right now. You just talked about it's going to be greater than 25%. So that was my first question is, like on the heat map, the desert map, it says greater than expected, less. What is the target?
We don't have one.
We don't have one.
We do not. But what I will tell you is this, that there are communities across the state that are relatively devoid of CTE. And there are other communities that, while privileged to have millages and CTE centers, nonetheless have kind of sub-deserts. They have children who don't want to cross school lines or school district lines or other lines to attend programs. Director Mills mentioned transportation as an issue, but there are sociocultural barriers as well, and we have to work to break those down across the state.
So with those in mind, and then as I asked the previous presenters, like how are we marketing in those districts? Is there a universal standard, or is each district doing their own thing? Are we in some areas where you said virtual, you talked about virtual because they lack broadband in the area, right? So they can't get it, right? So there's a whole host of things about CTE I would like to get into, but just overall is in those areas where it's less than, are we targeting that? Because if if everybody's generational farmers and there's no ag program, I don't want to do automotive. I want to do ag stuff. You know, so is everything being offered or tailor-made to the community of its own cultural makeup?
That's the ideal, that communities look at their workforce and the workforce around them in the labor market, because they're required to have community partners and industry partners.
Yeah.
But right now, each CPID, that we looked at that map before, each CPID and within that, each district sometimes has the ability to market on their own. We also have a statewide marketing campaign, but those are things that we'll look at as part of this Deserts project.
Okay, and last, I know you guys put up the benefits, the salaries and from phase to phase, but like, how many of the people, the students, when they leave the CTE program, actually get hired in a field? Not necessarily the field that they study, but so yeah.
Yeah, right here, 95.4%.
Okay, I missed this.
Now, we do have a breakdown of this that I could provide you with later, but we look at how many are employed, how many are continuing their education, or how many are doing both, and that's our placement data.
So we're working with the employers to make sure that the pipeline is seamless.
Yes.
Okay. I'm good, sir.
Thank you, Senator. We know you are. Dr. Pugh?
Thank you for this presentation, and every time we're getting this presentation, the information, the programming keeps getting better and better. And I will tell you, sitting here for a little over 10 years, I was one of those who had to be sold on CTE and making sure that we could really truthfully say that this is something that all students need to be a part of. One of my questions to Senator Bullock's question on that slide, are we only tracking, and I hate using that word tracking, but only for that second quarter, or are we looking at data beyond that?
You mean the second quarter after they graduate?
Yes, yes.
Right now, we're required to track that second quarter after they graduate. The challenge that we have is that our system for identifying students does not line up with the post-secondary system. So we're doing this tracking through calling students and contacting them and giving them surveys. But until we have a system that lines up, it becomes more difficult for us to track them further.
Okay.
So we are attempting that in some ways, but it becomes challenging.
That's interesting. And then going back to the data, and you probably said this, and I'm looking at slide 28, and when we look at the African American students, I think we've captured in some of the conversations that we've had already, but any thoughts on why those numbers are not growing, changing positively at the pace of some of the other? And they're growing, so that's a good thing. I want to say that. But
that's one of the things that we'll look at in our Opportunity Gap workshop with our districts coming up in January, because really this is statewide level data, and we need them to look district by district to tell us where is that happening in their district and why isn't it happening, or why is it? What are the promising practices that they have, and what are the barriers that we need to address to be able to make that happen?
right. And then, and it sounds like we've done some amazing assessments as to what buckets we, some of the data fits in. And just wondering if then we're ready to use that outreach, that data to determine the outreach that we do for each of these populations.
Yes, that will be part of what they look at.
Thanks, Diane.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Ms. Snyder, Ms. Guzmano, Ms. Lipton.
Just really quick, very supportive of the work you guys are doing. I just want to ask a quick question about instructor certification. So do all CTE instructors have to have a teaching certification?
They have to have either a certificate or an authorization. So they have two avenues. They may either have a standard teaching certificate with a CTE endorsement, and they still have to have those 4,000 hours of work experience as part of that. Or they may be coming directly out of the field with those 4,000 hours, and maybe they may be annually authorized to teach, and then they'll be working toward a certificate.
Okay, so they do have to eventually get a certificate.
At some point in time, that's what we hope for them.
Okay, and what's the time frame with which they have to get that certificate?
Right now, they have 10 years to sit on an annual authorization, and then we're hoping that they gain that certificate at that point.
Okay. Do we have any waivers for either, do we typically give out waivers for either one of those parts of the pathway? No, okay.
They must have that 4,000 hours and come out of industry and have one of those two things.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Thank
So
you. Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Ms. Guzmano, and then Ms. Lipton.
First of all, thank you, because we love working with our CTE in my district, and I just really appreciate learning more about it, because I think as a regular classroom teacher, sometimes we forget the different avenues. But I wanted to piggyback a little bit on what Ms. Snyder said and then ask a question of my own. With the industry certifications, do you feel like sometimes it's a challenge to explain to industries how having students can benefit their programs, like the other way, not necessarily convincing schools, but convincing different industry leaders that it's a benefit to them, and how do you outreach to them, I guess is my question.
Most of the time, there is no convincing them. They're the ones crying for people,
Okay.
and they're willing to partner. So it's just making that connection between the two, and they'd love to have more. They'll be our biggest supporters.
And then second, the AP thing is amazing, because that is a huge barrier to students because of the cachet of an advanced placement. So I'd love to know more about that or hear about that, because that seems like a huge barrier removed for most high school students.
It's a new pilot. Right now, the AP program is just with cybersecurity programs, and they are growing that. So this is year 2 of the pilot.
Okay.
We have, I believe, 11 districts who are participating in that,
Mhm.
but that number continues to grow. So folks continue to ask. I'm not sure how many they'll be able to take. So they'll look at this pilot, and then they'll move forward in other industries.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Guzmano. Ms. Lipton?
Thank you, Dr. Rice. Thank you for the presentation. I think that when we talk about lifelong learning and stackable credentials, I think that there is no greater model than the CTE model. And Michigan, I really do believe, is a leader in this area. I do agree with you that, exposure and really looking at where those deserts lie and trying to figure out how we get more students involved is certainly something to look at. But one component, at least in terms of the work that I do with our promise zones, we need more school counselors, school guidance counselors. And oftentimes the entrance point for so many students into these programs is through their guidance counselor. And when you have guidance counselors who have a caseload of 500-600 students or more, or schools where they don't have guidance counselors, it's really hard for anyone to be able to have those conversations with students. And when I've worked in schools where there are no guidance counselors, or guidance counselors are so overworked, we'll get students all the time in 12th grade looking at a community college program and saying, oh my gosh, I wish I had known that I could have started doing this earlier. And oftentimes, the guidance counselor would have been that person that could have exposed them to that. So just a not so shameless plug for funding for more guidance counselors in our schools.
I think it's a good point, because they are gatekeepers in many regards, and children can't experience what they're not shared, and so there's a real value to guidance counselors, and we lag in that area nationally. Thank you, Ms. Lipton. Other reflections? I'm looking around for first bites, additional first bites, seeing none. Senator Bullock for a second bite.
I have a thought that I missed until President Pugh brought up a point about the race and ethnicity. It was a philosophy of ours at the Michigan Legislative Black Caucus about when folks or organizations say that the group or the body or the participants meet the number of, matches the community, So like if the minority community is 10%, that's everybody included, that you have a program and there's only 10%, it actually does a disservice to the minority community because they got to work and do twice as much or be twice as hard usually, even with the idea of the social, cultural dynamics, et cetera. And so I just want to put that on your mental, on your frontal lobe about you got to do a little extra for the minority community so that it doesn't necessarily, you got to do a little extra. And sometimes even in the majority community, there are segments of that community that need some extra push, some extra whatever that may be needed to get them to the point where they're participating, enrolled, and become a part of the fabric of the community.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate.
He was on my shoulder. Like
I appreciate. Well, I'm Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder. That's what happens when you have old ears but a young heart. Thank you for sharing that. I would like to do a little bit of a springboarding off of that theme in one moment. Any other board members care to share? Once, twice, thrice. Hearing none. A few reflections to Senator Bullock's thought, and it is related in part to what we saw in the firefighter academy. You have to work harder to get young women into that program because it's been traditionally viewed as a male profession. There's nothing that suggests that women can't be strong fighter fighters. They certainly can be, but you've got to battle that perception that it's a male field. There are other professions that have a reputation for being female fields, and it's hard to get men into those. And I think to Senator Bullock's reflection, there are challenges in particular communities, either geographic or ethnic, about particular functions. I know one community well that for the last 5 decades has been underrepresented in its community of color at the CTE Center. These are tremendous programs, but the school district didn't get involved early. And so forever, that community has been distant from their CTE center. Not a good thing. Now, all it takes is one great instructor to start reaching out in a community and saying, I see you, I appreciate you, I want you to be part of the program. And that breaks down barriers. And you can change those numbers pretty quickly. But you have to do it expressly. You have to do it explicitly. You can't do it implicitly. It can't be in your head and not out your mouth. You've got to lay it out there for kids and parents and staff to understand. So I share that as a theme. So that's one. A couple of items on numbers. So CTE is about goal 4 of the top 10 strategic education plan, which is about the expansion of secondary school programming, CTE, APIB, early middle college dual enrollment, and transition services for students with disabilities. But in addition, CTE, as you know, is about graduation rates. And you laid it down softly. I'd like to lay it down a little bit harder, that for some of our young people, CTE is what geeks them on school, and all of a sudden there's a reason to be in school. Some people have a little bit of a snobbish perspective about CTE. They're too good for CTE. They think that those are old careers, not today's careers. But when your toilet won't flush,
Or you need an identity.
and you've got an electrical issue, or a carpentry issue, or a welding issue, they don't appear to be old careers anymore. I had a young man on the spectrum explain to me about hydropony, aquaponics. I didn't know these terms. And he's explaining to me about growing in water with and without fertilizer. And this was what geeked him. This was what turned him on to school. And this gave him purpose. This is why he was studying science. This was why he was studying math. This was what he was going to do as a career. Some kids are part of CTE because they're shot from cannons and they know precisely what they're going to do. Some kids are exploring. And when they figure out what they want to do, because of CTE, they're locked in. They're more likely to graduate, goal 5 of the top 10 strategic education plan, and they're more likely to go on and earn a post-secondary credential. Isn't that right, Mr. Carlisle? Which is goal 6 of the top 10 strategic education plan, which we'll hear more about this afternoon. I'm old school, and so old school to me is not is not slur, it's not slander. It's good to be old school. But for some people, old school is old fool. And I'm here to tell you that there is some old school in CTE, but there's some new school in CTE. And one way or the other, it helps children connect to school. So it's about goal 4, yes, but it's about goal 5 as well. It's about goal 6 as well. But we can talk all we want about the value of children going to 2-year and 4-year institutions, and we certainly want more of our children to go to 2-year and 4-year institutions. CTE can be a bridge to 2-year and 4-year institutions, but it can also be a bridge to certificates of achievement and certificates, industry credentials that lead right into strong jobs that can help you support a family. So that's my story, and I'm going to stick to it. We're going to continue to press CTE. We think that there is enormous value to it. And then two elements on numbers. I want to be clear. In a number of our metrics across the state, not just in CTE, but in a number of metrics across the state and across the country, we continue to dig out from the pandemic. The beautiful thing in CTE is we are above our pre-pandemic numbers. We're 1,000 children more than we were pre-pandemic in the state. We're 9,000 kids more than we were at the nadir, no Ralph intended, of the pandemic. 3 percentage points more than we were at the nadir of the pandemic, 1 percentage point higher than we were pre-pandemic. Those are wins, and we should celebrate those wins. Relative to completers, and yes, you can move to that slide, it's three more. Relative to completers, we're 2,000 completers higher than we were pre-pandemic. We are 8,400 higher than we were at the nadir of the pandemic, at the trough of the pandemic. Those are big deals as well, and we should celebrate those as we seek to go higher, as we seek to expand our numbers. We should celebrate where we are in these numbers. And then the only other thing that I would say in the spirit of appreciation for MDE team members and MDE OCTE team members, we appreciate Sheila Yap being here today, Michelle Cordano being here today in support of the presentation here. Board members, we appreciate you. We appreciate your attention and your great questions. We know you are supportive of CTE. We would like to see more support in the budget for CTE to support more for our young people across the state of Michigan. These are important programs. It's time to fund them as if we thought that they were as important as they are. Thank you very much, ladies. You be well. Board, we are moving on to our third presentation of the morning. That presentation is on Michigan's Top 10 Strategic Education Plan Goal 3 to improve the health, safety, and wellness of all learners. This presentation by the Office of Nutrition Services will share work to promote farm-to-program with local school districts. Farm-to-program work provides technical assistance to buy and serve more local food products in child nutrition programs. Dr. Deanne Kelleher and Ms. Wendy Crowley will share the MDE efforts, and Mr. Kevin Frank from Detroit Public Schools Community District will tie that work to DPSCD's Drew Farm. At the conclusion of the presentation, we will all have the opportunity to participate and get our picture taken in the annual Great Lakes Apple Crunch, food for thought for this morning. We welcome our presenters, Dr. Diane Golzinski, Deputy Superintendent in the Division of Business, Health, and Library Services, Dr. Deanne Kelleher, Director of the Office of Nutrition Services, Wendy Crowley, as I mentioned, our Farm-to-Program Consultant in ONS, and Kevin Frank, Senior Director of Culinary Services in DPSCD. This is an informational presentation. No board action is required, but a bite of the apple will be appreciated at the end of the presentation. Presenters, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Rice. Good morning, board. It is wonderful to be here with you. As many of you know, I have been working in the realm of school nutrition pretty much since dinosaurs roamed the earth. And I can remember the days when we desperately wanted to get involved in this work and just did not have the capacity. Some of you may remember Senator Wayne Schmidt from the Greater Traverse City area. Back in 2016, he was able to secure our first state funding to support local farmers getting their products into local Michigan schools. It was a dream come true for a number of us. We're so excited, and that is now a flagship program around the country. Michigan's 10 cents a meal program is a flagship program. You're going to hear about that, but what I also want you to know is that was really the start of some great work. That program, rare for some things where it can be a win for everyone, but it was a win for schools, it was a win for farmers, and it was a win for kids. And it catapulted us into the work that we are doing now through the Office of Health and Nutrition and local champions like Kevin Frank here. I want to thank Mr. Brian Van Dorn, who's in the back with us. He is the supervisor of the Nutrition Coordination Unit, which leads this work, and we really look to get Michigan products into all Michigan nutrition programs. So that's what you get to hear about today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Golzinski. So October is Farm to School Month. We celebrate that. But what we're going to talk more is not just farm to school, but we call it farm to program because it extends beyond that K-12, right? So it's extending to our child care centers, our before and after school programs. It extends beyond the school year in our summer food service programs, where we might be working with some community service agencies, such as the YMCA or some faith-based organizations. In addition, our office not only has the school programs, but we have household programs, and we are connecting local fruits and vegetables to our food banks. So those that are food insecure, in need of food security, also have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, Michigan-grown fresh fruits and vegetables. This is important twofold for improving nutrition for kids. Not only is it the health, being a pediatric registered dietitian by training, making sure that kids have a healthy start, but it's also about that education component, right? So when we're looking at farm to program, it is combining those two. In addition, by looking at our Michigan farmers and our small suppliers and linking them into our schools and our community, we are strengthening our Michigan economy. Our grantees are taught to always purchase local first. And so that is a very strong component of the work that is done within the farm to program. Now we link into 3 goals that we have in Michigan's Top 10 Strategic Education Plan. Clearly, goal number 3, when we're looking at health and nutrition, is one of those because yes, we're linking in our Michigan fruits, vegetables, and legumes in with the children. They are having those educational opportunities, but their overall nutrition also improves their opportunity for learning. Our work is impacting things like food security, cultural, community connections, as we expose children to a wide variety of foods that they may not have access to in their homes or their communities. And all of these connections are putting into these delicious, as we will experience with our Michigan Apple Crunch soon, our delicious foods. And it is about the foundation for lifelong learning. We also are part of goal number 1, just because we do have this childcare component, right? So we are teaching and providing young children fresh fruits and vegetables and how their food is grown. It's such a critical component to understanding nutrition, is how is that food grown? So they are learning at that early young age and setting that foundation that good nutrition will last a lifetime. And then additionally, as we've learned about CTE, we do also support goal number 4 in expanding secondary learning opportunities. An exciting development in Michigan is the recent awards of 2 regional cooperative grants, which are called PLANTS, the grants are. It's the Partnerships for Local Agriculture and Nutrition Transformation in Schools. These are funded through the United States Department of Agriculture's Food and Nutrition Services Healthy Meals Initiative. Of the 8 national awards, let's hear, of the 8, it's 2 in Michigan. We have 1 in Detroit and 1 in Muskegon. And both of these projects are aiming to provide on-job learning for our students, processing locally grown foods for use in our schools. This supports, again, that goal number 4, especially in our secondary culinary arts training programs. I'm now going to turn it over to Wendy Crowley, our food to program consultant in our Office of Nutrition Services.
I broke it. I broke it. Go ahead. Is it this one?
It's okay.
I'm Wendy Crowley. I am Farms Program Consultant. There are 2 of us in our team that are consultants. We also have an analyst that supports us, and we see ourselves integral to all of the other work that we do in our child nutrition programs. There we are. Thank you. So the 3 of us support our traditional school nutrition programs, but also food distribution, fresh fruit and vegetable program, the summer food service and equipment assistance grants, childcare programs that you already heard about. So we try and spread our support for all of the other sort of child nutrition programs that happen in our office. We have 1 consultant that manages the connections with grantees, so supporting applications, technical assistance, funding, those sorts of things. We have a consultant that focuses on the sourcing side, so she's the liaison to farms and producers and works on expanding producers' knowledge of how our farm to program works, how a farm could get involved with selling to schools, those kinds of support. And then our analyst does a huge amount of data analysis, supports all of the approvals of all of the purchases that are submitted to us every year. So these are some of the things we're USDA funded through a federal formula grants to states, as well as state funded through Section 31J, which is the 10 cents a meal program that Dr. Golzinski told you about. So this is just a list of some of the initiatives and projects that we work on. On the USDA funded side, one of our primary goals is to increase scratch cooking across the state. And so things like working with producers and food hubs to make food ready to be scratch cooked in schools is one of our goals. My partner consultant coordinates a stakeholder group around traditional indigenous foods and child nutrition programs. We work with some of our national grant partners, including that PLANTS grant that we just told you about. There are some really big federal grants happening right now, like Michigan Food Innovation Hub grants, things that are funded through that Healthy Meals incentives that are working to create much more sustainability in the middle of the supply chain. So things that are providing support for processing businesses, transportation grants, those kinds of things that gets food from the farm to the school or to the children. We participated in supporting the every 4 years Michigan Farm or the USDA Farm to School Census and some specific producer trainings. On the state funded side, We're developing a farm to program directory. We had 269 grantees in 66 counties in the program year that just ended. We're recommending funding for 251 grantees for this coming year that started a week ago. We participate with regional food councils. We present to a lot of other states. Michigan's program is really innovative and very interesting to many other states to hear about how we were created and how we continue, how we organize ourselves, the kinds of guidance that we work on. And then, like I mentioned, our analysts, we have about 30,000 lines of purchase data, individual purchases that child nutrition operators make in a year that we review and then reimburse. 10 cents a meal specifically is Section 31J of the State School Aid Act, and it's really innovative in that all sponsors of child nutrition programs qualify. So there's not any other restrictions to every single child care center, YMCA, school, non-public school in Michigan, all qualify for our program. And it puts 10 cents times every meal you served last year is your maximum calculation of your budget. So if you served breakfasts, lunches, suppers, and snacks across all of our child nutrition programs, 10 cents times that number is the maximum of your grant that you're eligible for. We reimburse, it's a matching grant, so we reimburse 50% of the invoices that you submit for us for any Michigan-grown, minimally processed fruits, vegetables, and dry beans. We work very closely with our partners at the MSU Center for Regional Food Systems. They're our evaluation partner. Groundwork Center for Resilient Communities is our outreach and communication partner. And the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development is our training and our connection to the ag side, to the farms and to the producers. This is last year's map because I said, we're 1 week into our new year and we don't have our map created yet, but this is where our 269 grantees were spread across 66 counties last year. Of interest to all of us that love the UP, there's a really big growing community in the Western UP that's working with farm direct purchasing and supporting those things, and we have a few more grantees in that Western UP for this year, and that's an exciting development for us. But we do have some pretty wide areas that we still have to work on. I have a couple charts that show the variety of fruits and vegetables that were purchased by schools. I'm not, of course, going to read all of this to you, but it's really interesting to see how many students are exposed to honeyberries and nectarines, and how many cranberries are consumed in schools, and not just apples, although it does all start with the apple. Apples are the easiest thing, right? I mean, every school in Michigan buys apples, and it's pretty hard to buy an apple in Michigan that wasn't grown in Michigan. So this is where we start with new grantees, with talking to people, right? You're already buying apples, why wouldn't you be participating in our program and receiving match funding for those? So by far, the apples is where it starts. And then as far as vegetables go, you can see things like Brussels sprouts and kale and kohlrabi and leeks, tomatoes, turnips, and then quite a bit of herbs that are used by schools. And Kevin may mention how many they grow in their hoop houses also and harvest for use in their culinary programs. But schools are growing their own of these vegetables and or purchasing them from local farms, and really teaching kids how much variety there is in the state of Michigan. And then the dollars, you can just see the breakout of the dollar impact in our communities. So again, if we are reimbursing you for $24,000 worth of asparagus, that means that you purchased $50,000 worth of asparagus, right? Or $49,000, whatever that math is. So all of these reimbursements have made a double that investment in our community. So as we move forward this year, for the first time, the legislation allows for grantees to use up to 25% of their grant for transportation and labor that supports the goals of our program. So one of the really largest barriers in the past has been schools and child care centers getting local produce to their schools. So unless you live
in Traverse City, right near a farm, it's pretty hard to find a producer or a processor that can deliver to you. So this will give our grantees the ability to submit for reimbursement that delivery fee that might come from a local farmer, supports the farmers. We've talked to several groups of them that are forming coalitions so that they can collect and distribute produce from multiple farms to a school or to a group of schools. It also gives our grantees the ability to pay a few extra hours for somebody to do the washing or the chopping or the processing, because in many cases, the produce that arrives comes in raw form, right? It comes in a bushel, and it's not yet ready to serve to kids. So those are really, really great developments that we really appreciate in the legislation this year. And I want to introduce my colleague, Kevin, who will talk a little bit about how this is real and the impacts that it has for the students in his district.
So again, my name is Kevin Frank. I'm the Senior Director in charge of culinary services for Detroit Public Schools, Community District, excuse me. And it's really, I think, appropriate that this presentation comes on the heels of the CTE presentation, because this picture is of Drew Farm. That is, it's a 2-acre farm that we operate at one of our schools in Detroit Public Schools Community District, Drew Transition Center. And Drew Transition Center is a post-secondary program for our emotionally and cognitively impaired students. All of the food that we grow on Drew Farm goes right back into our school meals to be served across the district at on our meals. So I just want to give you all a couple of numbers really quickly. Just last year, we grew just over 30,000 pounds of produce just from that farm alone. The farm has been in activity since 2014, and we've grown about 200,000 pounds of produce since then. What we've grown includes Swiss chard, brassica lettuces, kale, different versions of potatoes, carrots, corn, tomatoes. We've grown cucumbers, raspberries, grapes, lots of grapes, so many grapes, zucchini, squash, and pumpkins. We also grow herbs like rosemary, thyme, parsley, mint, and lavender that I have a team of chefs working up under me, so we take those herbs and we use them to season our meals, since we can't use a lot of salt per the USDA regulations. And one of the things that I'm really, really happy about is, like what Wendy just mentioned, the inception of the 10 cents a meal program, because that allows us to essentially get some of the reimbursement for the value of the food that we've grown. Our total spend on 10 cents a meal last year was just under $450,000. I apologize, there's a glare, so I kind of can't see. It was just under $450,000 for DPSCD alone in school year 2023-24, and just over $530,000 for school year 2022-2023. So that means we bought about $1 million of local produce in the past 2 years alone. And for me, that helps us, because we have, what you all may not know, is we have a very, very large contingent of urban growers, they have very, very small farms right in the city of Detroit. And for the longest time, I had been trying to find a way to purchase from them, but they really can't produce what we need, because in general, if I serve 50,000 meals a day, I need about 17,000 pounds of usable yield for produce in a day. Most of those farms won't be able to give me that, and the ones that can, it's gonna come at a premium. So the matching grant for the 10 cents a meal program helps me to kind of offset that cost, and it helps me to buy from some aggregators, so I can buy from the people that are growing right in my backyard. And my phone just got off. Sorry. But it's not just Detroit that we purchase from. I want to make sure that everyone knows that we're kind of spreading the wealth, as it were. So over the past 2 years, we've also purchased from farms in Oceana County, obviously Wayne County. We've purchased from farms in Kent County, in Grand Traverse, in Iona, and in Lenawee. So we're definitely, it definitely helps us to be like an economic driver. And it provides great benefits, both economically and from a nutrition standpoint for the students of the district.
Thank you, Kevin. Dr. Rice?
Thank you, presenters. We appreciate it. Board members, questions before apples? Ms. Lipton, Senator Bullock.
Thank you for the presentation. And, again, thank you for highlighting, yet another area where Michigan is leading the way. I just want to make sure I understand. So basically, what you're saying is that as long as, in other words, the whole meal doesn't have to be, in other words, if the fruit, vegetable, and legume portion of your food is coming from Michigan, then automatically you qualify for that reimbursement.
That's correct. One of those has to be. It does not have to be all three.
Oh, okay. Okay, so as long as one of those
Correct.
is coming from Michigan, then you qualify for that reimbursement. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Lipton. Senator Bullock?
I was just going to give great kudos to the brother over at Drew. Drew Middle School is a school for special needs. And then they have the farm there. There's available tours if you guys, we can set it up so you guys can go over there and see exactly what a great job they are doing. I've been there with legislators so that we could help fund that scenario, and we need more funding, so.
It's an incredible place.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator. Other board members? Dr. Pugh.
Just understanding, and thank you all for this presentation. It's amazing. And you were talking about the farm you purchase from other farms.
We do, yes, because so our farm, like I said, we're only able to produce 30,000 pounds of produce across the growing season last year. But we serve just in lunches, we serve 50,000 meals a day approximately. So in order to make sure that I have enough vegetables for everyone to meet our regulations, I have to have 17,000 pounds of usable yield, like usable vegetables, available every day. So like we have to purchase from other farms just to make that happen.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Anyone else? Going once?
I guess on
Please.
that question, could it get to the point that you're then also selling your produce?
I don't know about that because since the farm was funded with child nutrition money, everything that happens with it has to go back toward child nutrition or toward the child nutrition program. So I don't think we can.
Okay, I guess that's a question.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Anyone more for the good of the group? Hearing and seeing none, at 11:31, we are going to take a 5-minute apple break. Is that correct?
Yes, we are.
All right, very good.
He meant it.
Oh,
He
yeah,
said
there's our apple
crunch.
Follow along. The Michigan, anyone can do a Michigan Apple Crunch.
Yep.
There is the hashtag.
Yep, the official day this year is October 17th, but anyone is welcome to crunch with any organization or any size group that you have on your own. And we're trying to, we're in a competition with the other Midwest states. So trying to get as many crunchers as possible.
The apples are out here on the table.
Okay.
Those who want to participate, if you would grab one and then stand in front of the MDE logoed background, we will get a picture.
Board members, it is 5 minutes
No requirement to do
for
this.
a bite of the
Yes.
apple and a picture, and then back here for business. Let's roll.
They're delicious. They come from Michigan State University's farms. It's a cosmic crisp apple. Very, very delicious.
I don't want my picture taken. Let's grab an apple.
What's that?
Let's grab an apple.
Come on, friends.
Come on, Dan.
I don't know if mine was real, but we got it in like on a trip to Kentucky.
Okay, so I can. Okay. Yeah,
Have that Wi-Fi password over here.
Yeah, I worked in the legislature. We have
Yes, yeah. And, anyway. Yeah, yeah.
You don't have to choose. This is not like a choice.
Hey, here's Molly,
Yes,
and then I'll
yep,
say
I'm
me,
gonna
and then,
introduce you.
and then, I was gonna say that.
Are you
thank
even
you
from
right
Michigan?
Yeah,
here,
yeah,
and
do it.
then is that, and then you're,
Yeah,
and
then I,
then
yep.
you keep going, and then I'll jump to the
Yep.
case.
I literally have a piece.
That's why I didn't intend, actually. You're good. There's a mirror.
No, it's just like behind it too.
Okay, it doesn't.
Yeah. That's
I
what
had to go
I'm
look in the mirror
I
tonight
need
because I just blew my nose, and I was like, okay, this is great.
You got it? Good. Board members, it's 11:38. The next item on today's agenda is the presentation by the Michigan Teacher of the Year. We welcome Kelly Kuzmano, 2024-2025 Michigan Teacher of the Year, an English Language Arts teacher at Rochester High School in Rochester Public Schools. And Ms. Molly Dunham, Region 2 Regional Teacher, third grade teacher at Kingsley Elementary School in Kingsley Area Schools. This is an informational presentation. Presenters, welcome.
Thank you so much, Board, and I just want to reintroduce my colleague and Regional Teacher of the Year, Molly Dunham, and I'll let her kind of introduce herself.
Thank you so much for having me. I am a Michigan State person through and through, so go green, go white. I have a bachelor's from MSU and then a master's as well. I've been a teacher at Kingsley Elementary School. Now I'm in year 30. I'm in a unique situation because I went to school there myself. So I've actually been part of Kingsley Area School since I was 4 years old. So, and I'm 50-something, so that is a long time.
Television show.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone would watch it, but we could try. I'm a third grade teacher. I'm also a new teacher mentor program director at my school. I'm the curriculum director this year as well, and I also serve as adjunct faculty for Central Michigan University when they need me at the Traverse City campus. So I wear lots of hats. This is my family, although I'm at work so often they actually joke that my true family are my third grade teaching team. But at any rate, these are the people that share the same last name with me. Is my husband, Kevin. We've been married since 2000, but been together since Michigan State when I taught him how to drive a tractor at the cattle barns. And I'll say that again, I taught him how to drive a tractor at the cattle barns. We have two kiddos, Cora, who's 16, and Seth, who's 14. They keep me very busy. Cora's a dancer, and I am on the Northwest Michigan Ballet Theater Board. I'm the volunteer coordinator. And I'm also a soccer mom because my 14-year-old is an avid soccer guy. I enjoy gardening, cooking, and taking walks with my chocolate lab, Ella, when I have time. So today we're going to do a presentation about mentoring programs. Mostly we really want to say thank you because you have supported mentoring and induction in various ways. And we want to show you an example of, in both of our districts, how the money is being well spent and the programs are working.
So one of the reasons why the funding increase and the teacher pipeline is so very important is because obviously there are still vacancies in different areas, and I almost kind of want that heat map because you can kind of see that it really does depend on the district where vacancies still lie. And on the left is the vacancies occurring at Kingsley with the upcoming school year, this current school year. And then on the right is Rochester and the teaching vacancies. So obviously having the funding for growing the teacher pipeline is still important and has made a difference. So again, we want to kind of alert you to what's happening and what we're doing on the district's part to keep those new teachers in the classroom. Also, so again, these are kind of the contributing factors to why we are in a teaching shortage. The pay and benefits is obviously something we always confront, and we confront it in a lot of careers, and teaching is no different. Increased student behavior can sometimes play a role, or just the kind of narrative about increased student behavior, so I'll kind of add that. The difference in changes with parental and guardian support. And then sometimes teaching and education in general can be an isolating career. So having that support from colleagues, which is what Molly has done at Kingsley, is just incredibly helpful. All right, so how can we support new teachers in their first 3 years? We have all this increased funding to get the pipeline, get them into their jobs. They start out all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And so what can we do? And that leads us to the mentorship program.
Wonderful. So we've been having a mentorship program at Kingsley for a long time, even pre-funding. But I would say that now it's a more structured program, and it is more beneficial, and it includes more resources. So thank you for that. The benefits to the mentees are that they have a safe place to ask questions. They have assistance with all aspects of their job. Lesson planning, classroom management is a huge issue for some of our newest teachers because that is something that requires a lot of on-the-job training. So mentors really help a lot with that. classroom supplies and just navigating how to get materials and the processes in different buildings is sometimes very challenging. And it also is that feeling of belonging. And often when teachers are asked in exit interviews if they're leaving the profession, why they're leaving, they often report not feeling included, being an island, not belonging. And that's something that we really, that it's hard to get at. How do you make them feel as though they belong? But mentorship is a huge component of that. There are also a lot of benefits to the mentors. These people have been in the profession a while. They are enhancing their leadership skills, their listening and coaching skills. It kind of rejuvenates their excitement in their profession. And a lot of times, these people enjoy talking about teaching and learning, and their husbands or wives at home don't enjoy that conversation as much. So this gives them, a really good avenue for those and builds their excitement again, and a feeling of self-worth. The picture on the screen I just want to show you is our second grade team, and the gentleman in the middle was a new teacher last year, and one of the girls was his mentor last year, and another one is his mentor this year. So these are real people from my school that I took pictures of to share with you. So last year, we have about 90 teachers in our district, and last year we had 26 probationary teachers out of 90. So nearly 1/3, that's a lot. The board had offered an incentive, retirement incentive, and there were just a lot of other factors. But they decided that we were going to provide a more formal mentorship program, and they decided to give me a small stipend to facilitate that. So the law says 15 that a mentorship program or mentors, mentees will have, I believe it's 15 days in their first 3 years of programming. So I did 20 sessions with the mentees last year, and I'm doing 15 to 20 this year. And they're directed by me. They're focused on best practice. We use the Marzano evaluation model, and we spend a lot of time talking about those teaching elements and what those look like. I model good teaching. Many people in district model how to execute those elements, and I help them build their growth plans, and we reflect upon those growth plans throughout the year. That's really powerful. The mentor program calendar is such that there are 2 times in the year that the mentor observes the mentee and gives feedback, and I've developed forms that they use for that. And then 4 times throughout the year, the mentee observes the mentor and gains insight about things that they're working on as well. One of the things that we didn't really think of, these are some things that were outcomes of last year, of having it be a more focused approach. They really became a cohort of practitioners, really started to lean on each other more, as well as their mentors, which was a wonderful thing that we hadn't really thought of ahead of time. They were celebrating their successes and brainstorming solutions as trouble arose or situations arose. And they also developed, of course, close partnerships with their mentors. I have a couple of quotes here. This is from Hannah Rose. And she says, "The best part was that it gave us specific, structured time to brainstorm and problem solve with our peers who were in the same boat, which made me feel less alone in my successes and failures." And that she was a first-year art teacher last year at Kingsley Elementary School. And then Patrick Muth says, "Having a mentor and being part of the program during my first year of teaching was completely invaluable. The sense of confidence I gained knowing I had Molly and the group, I'm Molly, as a whole in my corner was crucial to my success." And Patrick is in his second year now as a second grade teacher at Kingsley Elementary School.
So the question becomes, how can we continue to work together, both as local districts and teachers, with the Department of Education and even the state board? The first is just keep it up. The investment in teacher recruiting is obviously something that is huge for the profession, but also for our local districts. And you can see on the slide that the funding to address the educator shortage has increased. And those increases have given us a lot of programs and just more opportunities to share about the profession that we know and love, but also to just kind of confront a narrative that maybe is a little bit negative about the profession. So things like the Future Educator Fellowships, Grow Your Own programs, which I love talking about and talked about a few years ago. Future Educator Stipends, Talent Together, which has some amazing people running that program, and the Rural Educator Credentialing Hub, which I know because I visited Kingsley, is a little bit in the rural part of our state. So that's the first thing that I think is a huge positive. But then there's also the continued need and why quality mentor programs work. And so maybe, Mel, if you want to speak first, and then I'll add in.
Sure. I want to also say, before I get into that's to start this, is that Marty Snitchin, I'm not sure if I'm saying his name correctly, but came to speak at the MTLAC meeting in September, and he spoke a lot about the work that is being done around the state through the that was kind of spearheaded after the mentoring and induction law went into effect, and just the fact that I think Western Michigan University is developing some materials at the time, and I'm very excited to see those materials. Also, he spoke a lot about mentors needing coaching. And so that kind of gets into, differentiating between any mentor program and a quality mentor program. And, some of the things that I do, I've just stumbled upon. And I think that we need to do a good job of helping people who are in charge of these mentorship programs not just stumble upon good resources, but have the tools to train their mentors, train their mentees, and give school districts the idea that giving them release time so that the mentors and mentees are able to work together and it's not just after school on their own time really shows the value that we are placing on the programs, and just offering training for the administrators and pay for directors and for mentors.
And just to add to a couple of things that Molly brought up, one place that I think we really need to continue kind of talking to and communicating with is our higher education programs, because both of us went through Michigan State's program, which was amazing, but we came from a different model of how mentoring worked and how the start of your career looked. And a lot of teachers in our age bracket went through that. So I can't stress enough that teachers that are veterans need to be taught about how that model has shifted and the ways of support. And then, like every teacher says, I want to double underline the word time, because we know that time is precious and a teacher has so many things. So just re-emphasizing the value, even with both mentors and mentees, because mentees will be like, well, that copier jammed, I gotta go do this, and just the endless rat race, but just stressing the importance of having that release time and kind of dedicated release time that's not so much how to unjam the copier, although that is very valid, and I needed to learn that. So before we kind of close out, I just wanted to give an update. And I get bummed out that my slides are due earlier than on my visits, because I would have you'll find out about Kingsley in a couple of months when I show off. But I have just really appreciated the program, the MTLAC program, which is the Michigan Teacher Leadership Advisory Council. And that's where the Regional Teachers of the Year work together. I cannot stress enough the value of that program and just getting teachers together from across the state to talk and learn from the department has been huge. On the right, the other thing I did a couple months ago was my very first time golfing. Yep, you heard that right. With the Mimic Foundation. I am so glad that is not a video. So that is just a still photograph, because it was rough out there. But like anybody who's supportive of teachers, they were supportive of me, and we're supportive of them. And so both of those programs have been phenomenal. So thank you. Thank you for your time. We'll take any questions.
Thank you, teacher leaders. We appreciate you. Board members, reflections? Dr. Robinson.
First of all, thank you. This is a great presentation. Really important to, every time we talk about the teacher shortage, I think of these metaphors of we're going to dump the water out of the boat that's leaking, or are we going to fix the hole, or are we going to do both? And I think you're doing both here, so bravo to you. One of the things as a music person that sometimes I worry about is that most of the research on mentoring suggests that mentoring should be discipline specific. So when you hire an art teacher, there should be an art teacher helping with the mentoring. And in smaller districts, that's often very difficult. So could you talk a little bit about discipline specific matching between mentors and mentees?
Sure. We in my region we have the music specifically. We have an art teacher, Hannah, who you saw in the video or in the slideshow. She's an art teacher, and she is mentored currently by the high school art teacher. However, several times a year we have her matched up with somebody who works in TCAPS in Traverse City Area Public Schools. So she has a district to district mentor as well, and they're provided with time so that they can work
You're
together.
sharing cross district boundaries.
Correct. Correct. Okay. And so in our music department is often similar, although it's not been formal. When we have those regional professional development opportunities, we on purpose put those people that are discipline specific together so that they're able to do some natural mentoring, and that has been really positive.
And the way that, maybe I was reading between the lines, but you talked about getting some money for you as the director. I'm assuming that all the mentors are paid for the time that they're doing mentoring with their mentees?
Yes, they are. Okay. And I mean, it's a token amount, but it's there, and it really makes them feel valued, I think. But I'm paid also. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Other board members, Ms. Lipton?
Thank you. Do you find that having the structured mentorship program has had a positive effect on teacher retention, or is it too early to tell? What do you expect?
Well, so a couple of years ago was when we had a huge incentive for retiring. So we have, just like every district, they're kind of, we have pockets of years where we hire more or fewer people, but we're a pretty small district with only about 90 teachers. So to have 26 out of 90 be in their first 3 years of teaching last year, and I have 25 this year that I'm working with, that was quite a large number. I think it's too early to tell, but at the end of certain benchmark times throughout the year last year and at the beginning of this year, I had them reflect on how they felt, and I just asked them, specific questions, kind of getting at like how was this helpful for you as a mentor and as a mentee, and the feedback was phenomenal, and it really spoke to the feeling of belonging that the mentees had, but also the feeling of kind of like rejuvenated excitement in the profession that the mentors felt. And that was why I included those things in the slides, because that I wasn't sure, that feeling would come through, and they very clearly said that helps. So, there's some external research that shows that if people are feeling more included and not feeling like islands, then they're going to be, that they're going to stay. So I hope that.
And I just want to echo Molly, because I didn't speak about Rochester's program, but we've gone to a more structured program as well. And I would say anecdotally, although I don't have data like at the ready, that it absolutely keeps teachers. I do think the importance is on the pairing, right? So the pairing is really important to make sure that expertise can be shared, right, and discipline specific and levels. And then also that both partners, so the mentee and the mentor, see the value. And for mentees, we know that they have a lot to do in those first few years. So if they can see how that support is value and adding to their understanding of the profession and lightening their load, like, here, let's grade these together. I'll show you some tricks for how to cut down the grading. Like right there, that is so important that we are teaching and modeling those kinds of things. And then for the veterans, it really can work very powerfully to be a thought partner. Like, oh, let me show you this thing that I learned at Michigan State in my class about how to do something. And so then that's, adding or lightening their load. So I think it's just really important that we put a lot of time and thought into how we partner people up.
May I piggyback on that?
You
I was thinking back to the social studies gentleman that we were talking to in Kingsley on Friday, and there was this veteran teacher who's been teaching as long as me came up and said, I have to tell you, my mentee is mentoring me. And I said, okay, tell me more, Well, he had come up with a very good idea on an extension in his civics lesson. And so Steve was trying that, and they had, like the principal come in, and they had this mock situation going on, and he was just invigorated to share with us what was going on, and it was probably the most excitement I'd seen on his face in a long time. So it was really cool that he grabbed us to say, I'm being mentored by my mentee, and it's amazing. So good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lipton. Other board members, Dr. Pritchett?
Thank you for the presentation, and I don't think we can emphasize enough how important it is. I remember my first teaching job. I'm going to date myself. Not only did they show me where the copier was, but they showed me where the ditto machine was.
Oh, yes.
Which, when it gets jammed, is a real mess. Anyways, but it's the relationship building also. Having the more formal sessions of being able to share strategies, et cetera. It's now the first grading period. What do I do? Certainly first parent-teacher conferences.
Absolutely.
What happens if, especially elementary teachers who are usually sometimes just in their room by themselves, and what happens when a parent's really upset or doesn't ask any questions, et cetera, et cetera. So it's those relationships, I think, that can go on and on. I love the story about the veteran teacher now being rejuvenated on an idea that I think says a lot also. So absolutely we need to continue to support this and talk about it, because unless we do that, all of the recruitment efforts will end up being somewhat in vain.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pritchett. Any more board members care to share? Going once, twice, thrice, 3 thoughts before lunch. The first takes me back 5 years plus, a conversation with Speaker Lee Chatfield at the time. I asked Speaker Chatfield if he thought that there was a teacher shortage in the state. He said, well, Dr. Rice, I'm sure that there is a speaker shortage somewhere, a teacher shortage somewhere in the state, but not in my district, not in the eastern Upper Peninsula. I said, well, Speaker, that's really interesting, because in a few weeks I'm going to be in your district, and I'll be speaking with educators in your district, superintendents, principals, teachers. And if in fact there is no teacher shortage in your legislative district, Speaker, I'll be calling you back and apologizing and acknowledging that you were right and I was wrong. But on the off chance that they tell me that there is a teacher shortage in your legislative district, Speaker, they'll be calling you back and letting you know. We underfunded public education profoundly in the state. It's not just my opinion, although it is my opinion. It's the result of research. MSU's David Arson noted that from 1995 to 2015, we were last in the nation, Bill Parfett, in total revenue growth, inflation adjusted. That's a special place to be. And that last in the nation rank over a 20-year period harmed the profession profoundly. It created a teacher shortage. When I started in this role just a bit more than 5 years ago, there was precisely nothing to address the teacher shortage in the state of Michigan, not a penny. In fiscal year '21, we got $5 million to address the teacher shortage. That's about $3.50 per child to address the teacher shortage, a pittance. It was $1.67 million the next year. Finally, the legislature approved the $575 million to which you referred in fiscal year '23, 3 summers ago, in June of 2022. That $575 million included $305 million for scholarships, $50 million for student teacher stipends, because we are not in a buyer's market anymore, we're in a seller's market. In a seller's market, you have to incentivize differently than you do in a buyer's market. And it also included money for Grow Your Own, $175 million for Grow Your Own program, support staff to teachers, students to teachers. The $448 million to which you referred in the last fiscal year paid for $225 million for teacher loan repayment, because when you come into the profession, you're not tremendously well compensated. So to relieve the burden of the loan repayment is to remove a barrier to retention. It included $50 million for the mentoring programs that you are talking about now, $10 million a year for 5 years. It included $15 million for a rural credentialing hub, which Ms. Kuzmano will not help your district, but Ms. Dunham will help yours, and will help many others in the state, because it's not all Tri-County, it's not all Kent County, it's not all Kalamazoo County, it's not all Washtenaw County or Ingham County. There's a whole lot of geography up above Lansing, and a whole lot of children up above Lansing whom we have to serve as well, and another $100 million in the fiscal year '25 budget. Those dollars are going to help us rebuild a profession that was damaged by policymakers in this state. This was a manufactured teacher shortage crisis that we are addressing, and that is going to take years to address. Your focus on mentoring is huge. The first year, 2 years in the profession are very, very difficult. And what we know is, if you can make it through the first few years, and not just make it through, but feel good about yourself and what you do for children in the first few years, you can become a career teacher, a career educator. But a lot of people don't make it to year 2 or year 3. It's a hard profession. And the absence of mentors, the absence of mentoring that is smart, is purposeful, is careful, is discipline specific, all those good things. Mentoring is huge, and the absence of mentoring is a death knell blow for a lot of our teachers. A lot of people outside the profession, in other professions, hear this, and they kind of shrug their shoulders, yeah, whatever, yeah, of course you got a mentor, we've been doing mentoring, we've been doing mentoring in our fields for years, yeah. You know what? Teach for a month, let alone a year, let alone a career. And you'll understand better about the importance of mentoring. We appreciate our professional educators, mentors and mentees, and we appreciate your work in helping to rebuild the profession. Those programs to rebuild the teaching profession, they were incubated in this department, to be clear, as a pushback against the decisions 2 blocks away, the underfunding of public education by the state legislature over years. Now, the legislature has re-become interested in the profession, and by extension, in public schools. And that's the good news. The bad news is, to paraphrase Frost, we have miles to go before we sleep. And English teachers would understand the reference. It is 12:08, Board. We are going to break for lunch until 1 p.m. Thank you.